So our thoughts can be a little bit like passengers on the bus. We're the driver, and we're trying to head to a destination that's meaningful, a place that we really want to go. Yet on the drive, there's this noise coming from the back. These passengers talking to us, trying to get in the way. At best, they distract us, and at worst, they convince us to turn around and head a direction that we want to go. Who are the passengers? Well, over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about one of the main things that stop us from living a fulfilled life, and it's the very thoughts that we have in our mind. This is who I'm referring to as the passengers on our bus. So while there are many different things that our thoughts may tell us, in the same way there are many different things the passengers may speak to us as we try and drive this bus, the reality is that the passengers themselves have often been the same ones that have been there for a very long time. So let me illustrate this from an example. Let's imagine that there's a young girl. A young girl goes to school one day, primary school, and as she goes to school, she approaches some of her friends. On the way to approaching them, imagine they turn around to her and they start laughing at her. They tell her that she's too fat to be in this group anymore, and they walk off. In that moment, we have a bus stop. A moment where a passenger jumps on her bus. Let's call it the inadequacy passenger. This passenger comes on and tells her, "You're not good enough. You're too fat. You're not wanted." Maybe years later, she goes to high school, and now she's changed her life. She's been listening to this passenger for so long telling her that she's fat, that she's changed everything. She's exercising, she's restricting her eating, she's no longer fat. But instead of the same story that was there before coming out, the passenger's changed what it says. Let's imagine she's sitting down to an exam. This time the passenger says things like, "You're going to fail," or "People are going to see how dumb you really are," or "You're just not able to do this. Just give up. You can't do it. It's too hard." Years later again, maybe, in her 20s, maybe she enters a relationship where she's feeling unsatisfied and unhappy with the relationship. Maybe they're not spending enough quality time. Whatever it is, she's feeling a bit neglected. Imagine she's about to approach her partner to talk about how she's feeling. However, on this occasion, her mind comes back in. The same passenger with different thoughts again. This time saying things like, "If you say what you feel, maybe he'll leave you," or "You probably won't get anything that you're asking for anyway," or "It's not that bad, just deal with it. Other people have worse." Whatever it is, it's different words, but the same passenger with the same core message, that you are just not good enough. Last week we talked about learning to become more aware of our thoughts, and that's the critical first step to doing this process of arming ourselves against our thoughts. Today we're going to introduce the second step, which is called remembering. The thing about these passengers on our bus is that we weren't born with these passengers. Usually there's an experience, or sometimes a set of experiences, where they're introduced onto our bus, kind of like bus stops where they got on board. Unfortunately, for many of us, those bus stops were so long ago, and we've had these passengers on board for so long that we start to confuse their voice with our own. In other words, we start to find it difficult to distinguish what the passengers are saying from what we actually want, and we become deceived by their words. Once we become aware of thoughts, remembering involves three main stages. Stage one is that we start by remembering the origins of the passengers. Remembering where these passengers came on board involves us stopping and pausing and actually looking back over our life at the experiences where this passenger may have gotten on board. What's the purpose of that? Well, one of the things that does is it reminds us that we are not our thoughts, that we are not these passengers. And in other words, it gives us more of a sense that we can decide what we're going to do next, rather than just automatically being led by the passenger. Remembering the origins of the thought helps us remember that there was a time where we existed before this passenger, and this passenger doesn't need to be the one that drives our behavior now. The second step of remembering, after we remember the origins of the passenger, is to remember the origins of yourself, to remember the values that you have, the qualities that are important, the things you want to stand for in life. You see, when you only have one thing directing your behavior in your mind, it's very easy to be led by that because there's nothing else directing you. Remembering our values gives us something else to fixate on in that moment, something else to fix our eyes on and direct our behavior other than what's happening in between our ears. The last stage of remembering involves remembering that you are the bus driver. Remembering that just like passengers on the bus, your thoughts have no control over the steering wheel. All they can do is to make a sound enough argument to convince you to follow what they're saying. But if you're willing to allow for that that noise, you can remember that you decide where the bus goes. So what does that look like in a moment? Let's go back to that young girl who isn't so young anymore, and let's imagine her in that moment about to speak to her partner about her feelings. Let's imagine that she's listened to our video last week, and so she's aware of what her mind is saying. She picks up on her thoughts saying that she should probably just not say anything, or she picks up on the thought that says she should probably just accept it as it is, that she might lose her relationship if she expresses her feelings. So she catches that. The second thing now, she remembers this not good enough passenger that's speaking now has actually been there at different stages throughout her life, saying different things but with the same core message. So she remembers that she is not this passenger. She also remembers her values for openness, authenticity, honesty, connection, and she refocuses on those in that moment. And lastly, she remembers that really she is holding the wheel, that the passengers may be there, that the noise may be a present thing that she experiences, but they don't compromise or take away her choice. So next time you notice your passenger speaking up, I want you to see if you can just pause, even if you finish this video and pause, just to notice the origins of the passengers, to try and find the moments where these things came into your life. Maybe it's a what if passenger, maybe it's a not good enough passenger, maybe it's a high expectations passenger, or maybe it's a what's the point passenger. We all have varied passengers. Sometimes we've got the whole combination. But whatever it is, see if you can pause in the moment and just ask yourself, 1, when did this passenger get on board? 2, what are my values really about this situation? What do I really care about? And is that in line with what the passenger's saying? And 3, that I'm the driver. I decide where I'm going, and the passengers might be loud and intimidating, but no passenger can ever take away my choice to pursue what it is that I want to do. So with that said, I look forward to meeting next week as we discuss the third step of arming yourself against thoughts, which is to come to a resolve. See you then.